safe, wholesome food to the globe. Today with?
I am Jean-Luc Sormet. I'm working for the Sealed Air Corporation, and I am in charge of global equipment.
So I think it's very important that Sealed Air participates in events such as Food World. Between the innovation and the sure parts of the conference, I think it's very important that we're part of the thought leadership to help craft where the food industry is going to go in the future.
And I think it's really important to participate to this summit to be sure that we are still aligned with the different food processors and understand what are their main priority.
So I took part in the panel discussion where we discussed food waste and how we were going to feed the population in 2020, which should be over 9 billion people. So it was a great panel. We had a lot of great discussions and questions from the audience. So hopefully everyone left with an idea of where we are and where we need to go as an industry.
And during this summit, I was introducing our brand new service offer. This service offer is based on our knowledge of the industry and on the way to capture information and providing service to maintain the KPI which are required for good food safety and a longer shelf life.
So I think the delegates and the speakers were very high level. We heard some very engaging conversations and presentations with some of the highest people in the companies that are represented, as well as had a great opportunity to network with our peers.
And during this summit, I was really impressed by the quality of the presentation and the deep and extended knowledge where we were giving access to.
Yeah, I think obviously food waste is a key part of a lot of people's thought leadership today. Not only does the humanitarian part, where 1 out of 3 calories of food produced every day is wasted, there's also an environmental aspect where if food waste and the CO2 emissions it produced was a nation, it'd be the 3rd largest nation in the world. Then there's the economic viewpoint, which I think everyone's starting to grasp, that there's real opportunity to make an impact by reducing food waste to feed the world, as well as positively impact the food economy.
Well, I think what I could add to that is really time for action. I mean, we cannot wait any longer. And I mean, we really need to associate also the retail part of this. We have a great responsibility as well as the rest of the supply chain.
So there's no doubt there's a lot of involved in food waste, from whether it's food loss at the front end of the food chain all the way through food waste to the consumer, and everyone plays a role. The consumer plays a role, retailers play a key role, as well as distribution and the food processors. So everyone has a vested interest and everyone can play a role in helping solve the problem.
Well, I think what was probably missing during the presentation is the risk which is coming from the cross-contamination. We talk about allergism and how we can reduce that as well. I think for me was maybe one of the part missing. I think I'm more convinced, even more today than yesterday, that the digitalization and the way we will capture information and bring back feedback and intelligence around it will make the revolution inside of the food industry.
So I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, the biggest challenge that the food industry is going to have to address is how to handle labor. Labor availability is a key issue in a lot of plants. So obviously automation, they're behind a lot of the more mechanized companies like the auto industry. So I think we'll see a lot of innovation and advancement there. Then it's obviously getting food transported around the world and preserving it in a manner that you can take it from where it can be produced to where it is needed for consumption.
I mean the vision is where the people are not bringing value, it's probably safer and better to do it with a robot. Usually when people are bringing value into the process, I mean, robots are just there to support and to help. And of course, to maintain robots, to develop robots, there will be a shift into the competence, inside of our own industry.
Well, I think everyone's fear with automation and the use of robots, how will that impact the cost of food? I think with the lack of available labor in a lot of areas, it'll actually enhance and make food production more economic and more viable to a larger group of people. So I think the biggest thing the delegates will take away from the Food World Conference is that there are a lot of issues, but there are also a lot of answers and a lot of solutions. And with collaboration within the food industry between the suppliers and the producers, that there's nothing that we can't conquer.
From my side, I mean, it became evident that this is a time for action, so we cannot wait any longer. And we saw a lot of really interesting technology who will help us to reduce the food waste, for sure. I mean, amazing science. I mean, there is a lot of science and intelligence around the food industry right now. And how do we get benefits out of it? How do we really use it to support the reduction of the food waste?
Well, I think the biggest thing I took away from the conference was the depth of knowledge that is present and the amount of science that's going in to provide the solutions that the food industry needs to provide safe, wholesome food to the globe.